All righty, let's get started. Prince and Dewan, you want to come up and show us your faces? Great. Alrighty. Well, everyone, we just want to truly thank you for being here. This is something that we are just incredibly excited about to share with you this great new initiative that we have been working on, DIECE, the Diversity and Inclusion Equity Council of Excellence. That's probably one of the first times I've actually said the full acronym out correctly, but nonetheless, DIECE. We're excited that you're here. A few housekeeping items before I open up my screen to share my PowerPoint is we are going to go through a series to introduce ourselves to you all. I know we know a handful of you, but just to spread our names and who we are to everyone on the call. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through just the outline of DIECE, and then we're going to have an opportunity for question and answers toward the end. So what I'll ask is that you use the question and answer function that you want to ask panelists as it relates to DIECE to Nick Saylor, and utilize the question and answer function to be able to ask those questions. And then if you have any technical difficulties or things like that, utilize Nick as well. Otherwise, if you want to share links, ask questions to the larger group, we have a lot of great people on this call that I'm seeing that do this work already. If you want to share links, resources, things of that nature, you can put those in the larger chat, and Prince will be manning that so that we can make sure that we're keeping our ducks in a row in that capacity. So again, we're super thankful you're here. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. Alrighty, so to make it official, here's our logo. Here is DIECE. Again, we are the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Council of Excellence. We are here to serve and propel and excel diversity, equity, and inclusion work in the space of sport, particularly within college athletics, but even more so to really support and empower those who are in the role of the diversity professional within their college, their unit, their sporting structure. So that is who we are. What we're going to do is we're going to start off by introducing ourselves. And ironically, I'm the first one to go. So here I am. I'm Sheridan Blandford. My hair is a little bit different. Had to, get my mean twist out going to keep you guys on your toes. But I'm the Director of Inclusion Engagement for Wisconsin Athletics. And I am just incredibly excited for this. This is something that we've been working on for over a year and a half, and we've kind of kept it under the radar to get the ball rolling on it, but to make it to expand it to be able to serve everyone in this space is really exciting. So again, to be able to support the diversity and inclusion professionals, but then to also figure out how we can all come together collectively to advance this work in an intentional way. So there's just a little bit about me, but what we decided is that we're going to share a little bit of fun facts about ourselves. So if you know me, you know that I just love peanut butter, and even more so, I love Jesus and gospel music. So it goes Jesus, gospel music, peanut butter. So that's a little bit about me. We'll move right on to our next person.
All right. Good afternoon and evening for my folks on the East Coast. Everybody, my name is Dewan Baker. I serve as the Diversity and Inclusion Director within athletics at the University of Nebraska, Go Big Red. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Dewan B. Baker. And I truly believe with DIECE, I believe that as a collective, we think and know that our roles are essential, right? And we want to utilize the influence and the experiences that we have to influence everyone else to realize that as well. And we think that DIECE can be a key component in showing everybody that this is something that touches every single facet within all of our organizations, and that we can do it at a very high level. Things that you can see or things that you need to know about Dewan. I love sneakers. I love Jordans specifically. Jordan 1 is my favorite Jordan. For the past 6 years, I lived in 4 different states. So coming out of school, doing internships, going to different states for grad school. So I've been around the block for the last couple of years. And lastly, I studied abroad in Italy as an undergrad. My junior year of college, and that was one of the more impactful times in my life. But those are just some fast facts about me. I'm really excited to share with you all and share with my colleagues what it is that we've been planning for DIECE for, like Sheridan mentioned, for the past almost year and a half at this point. And so thank you for being here, and I will now kick it off to Thomas.
All right. Yeah, like Dewan said, my name is Thomas Harris. I serve as the Assistant Athletic Director for Diversity and Inclusion and Employee Engagement at the University of Arizona. And I just could not be more excited for the launch of DICE. I think it's just perfect timing. We've been planning to launch this for a while, and then obviously the last couple of months has kind of given us a position in this industry. And so we're really excited to be able to help folks and be a useful resource. So excited about that. A little bit about me. I'm the youngest of six boys, so I grew up getting beat up a lot, but they were the only people who were allowed to beat me up. They protected me in the streets, and I guess that's all that really matters. I'm an extremely picky eater. When I say extremely, I mean extremely, and folks who know me know that. And if I play baseball, my walk-up song would be "This Is How We Do It" by Montel Jordan, which is my karaoke song. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
What up, family? My name is Prince Moody. I serve as Assistant Director of Student Athlete Engagement at Ohio State University. A little bit about me. I'm excited for DICE just for the reason to be around other individuals and professionals that do this work and to be able to create this community of professionals. So I'm just really excited to just be able to like start sharing ideas, sharing programming. So that's a little bit about me. And then for the people that do know me, I'm an avid thrill seeker. I love dangerous stuff. I don't know why. I'm just weird like that. I've been able to skydive. I've been able to hang glide. And one of the things that's on the bucket list for 2020 is to do bungee jumping. So hopefully you'll see that down the line after we get past all this COVID stuff. And then another thing about me is I love tea. So I'm an original tea drinker too. So like I don't do bags. I actually create my own bags of tea. So I'm legit with it. So that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to meet you all.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Nick Saylor, Director of Education and Training for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at Providence College. Just really excited to be a part of this wonderful, fantastic group and really see how DICE can really transform the space of DEI in athletics. I think for a lot of us, seeing the last couple of months, just in general, seeing how important and impactful our positions can be and will continue to be in the future gives me really great hope for what we can provide, to this industry. If you know things about me, I'm a big music person. My favorite artist is Nina Simone. Growing up, I was a little bit unsure of her voice. I was like, Mom, who is this? Like, I don't really know. But I just learned to love her spirit, her soulful vibe, and just everything she brought to the music industry, just as a strong young Black woman. And pineapple does belong on pizza. I know that's a hot take, and I might get some DMs or whatever later, but it's something that's true. And again, I'm just really excited to really be on board with all the work that we're doing, and just really sort of excited to get this off the ground. Like Dewan and everybody has said, we've been working on this for a long time, and just to be at this moment here is something that's really special.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. So that is your inaugural DICE Board of Directors. Again, we are just overjoyed to be here, and thank you all for taking time to be here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kick it off to Thomas.
All right. So what we want to do is start with a poll and just kind of get a gauge of who's in the audience, and also use some of this data, for qualitative research as far as like what we should provide everyone as far as programming, and also the conversations that we should start having with some of the administrations in our industry, and then also some of the different people in our industry. So let's see if this works. We have 5 questions. I guess I'll say this first. And obviously we wanted to launch this publicly because of the NCAA's new mandate for the ADID. And for those of you who do not know what that is, it's the Athletic Diversity and Inclusion Designee, and that is the person that's supposed to be the liaison between the NCAA and different institutions. We also know that there will be several people who will be doing diversity and inclusion work who are not the ADID as well. So we want to kind of know who we're dealing with and what we need to provide everyone as far as resources go. So hopefully this works. So you should see the first question here, which is, are you the ADID? Yes, no, I don't know. What is the ADID? I think we have everyone here. Give it just a few more seconds. Okay. All right. And let's go to the next question. Oh, no, same question. Let's see here. Going to. Okay, that's how you do it. Sorry about that. Okay, second question. Does your organization have a DEI council? A few more votes here. All right, that's everyone. Next question. Do you feel prepared for your role as the ADID? And if you're not the ADID, you know, just if you're prepared for your role, just helping with D&I. Few more responses. All right, let's move to the next question. What is your primary need in DEI work? A few more responses. All right. And the last question. A few more responses left. All right, and that ends our poll. So thank you all for participating in that poll. As I said, we'll use that data to kind of drive some of the programming that we'll come up with, and then also in some of the conversations that we're having with administrative roles within athletics. And then we'll also use the Q&As, questions that we get at the end for the same thing as well. So thank you. And I will turn it over to Dewan.
Just kidding, Sheridan. All right, so to get into some of the meat and potatoes of DIECE, so obviously you know why you're all here. A lot of you, based off of that poll, it was kind of cool to watch the data statistics come in, but there's a lot of the people, the majority of people on the call are doing D&I work, so we're excited that you're here. And looking forward to creating space. So the mission of DIECE is to discuss and evaluate and create tangible solutions that drive intentional growth and change toward inclusive excellence within college sport and sport at large. And even more so to really ensure that diversity inclusion professionals in sport feel like they're supported as they achieve that quest. I think a lot of us, I know particularly when Dewan and I were starting to have these initial conversations about a year and a half ago, being amongst the few who had the designated role, we were tasked with, again, bringing the best practices of what was happening at the nonprofit level, Fortune 500 level, higher education level, and combining that with the unique need of sport. And that presented some challenges. It was exciting, but presented some challenges, and we didn't necessarily have a community of people to lean on. So that was the main goal of creating the space, is to really provide that connection and community for folks doing this work. So in that same capacity, we, and Dewan had mentioned this earlier in his introduction, but we truly believe that every athletic department, sports team, conference, sport organization should have a designated diversity and inclusion professional, if not professionals, that specifically focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And not to, I know that a handful of our roles specifically within college athletics have that tacked on, but we really want to show the value in the fact that these are essential standalone roles, if not departments. So our guiding principles for DIECE are to connect, learn, and grow. Again, the big part where we've found a lot of value up to this point with our small, what we call the OGs, the original folks of DIECE, to connect all of us and make sure that we all have a community to learn so that we can all lean on each other. Specifically over the last couple months with what has happened, we've all leaned on each other a lot, shared best practices, served as, ears to listen. We've had a lot of opportunities to really lean on one another. And then the notion of the last portion is to grow. So to reach, to utilize our positionality, again, as I had mentioned, to create intentionality, entrench inclusive excellence within sport at large. So I'll pass it to Dewan.
Yes, thank you, Sheridan. So within regards to membership within DICE, our calendar starts officially on September 1st for membership. We believe that DICE is very, very valuable in regards to what it is that we can create and share with each other. In addition to, of course, the organization itself will need some type of monetary value attached to it in order to uphold the website, the bylaws, the legal necessities needed to operate at a nonprofit level. But we also understand that amongst even some of the more challenging things that we're facing within the NCAA right now in regards to how we're going to do fall or spring sports, we know that financially it is very, very difficult to have some kind of feasible fees be collected this year. And so we thought that it would be best to not collect any fees this year and provide DICE on a pro bono basis, if you will, and really utilize this year to build up some of the actual content and details that are going to be necessary to drive our positions forward, moving forward past this year as well. And hopefully we'll look to collect some of those fees in September of 2021. The membership fee is $100. We thought that was right around the price that was pretty competitive to the NACTA affiliate organizations. And it's right around the middle of the pack. And we thought that to give $100 to this organization and to get better at your job on an annual basis was really, really fair. And we believe that we can create a lot of the information that will help drive that price point and provide the value there. In regards to leadership roles, as we mentioned, we are going to serve as the inaugural board of directors. Board of directors member will serve on a 2-year term, or executive board directors will serve on a 2-year term, as I mentioned. Sorry about that. And we'll also have committee chairs. And within the executive board and the committee chairs, there's a nomination selection process, as most membership organizations have, to where you get into the organization, you do some really, really good work. You can nominate yourself or be nominated to serve on the executive board or serve as a committee chair. And we'll continue to kind of go through what the committee chair looks like as we go through the presentation, but those are the ways that we will comprise the leadership roles of the membership as of now. So what do you get if you join DICE? So some of the membership benefits that we think are really, really key is one, we provide an opportunity and a space to exchange information, ideas, and employment opportunities. And not to give too much away, but one of the things that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks is we see a large number of roles that are coming available, and we're tracking those roles to see where they're coming from, where they're being posted, what job descriptions are being created. So those are some of the things that we're doing on the back end to make sure that once you become a member, you have access to be able to find what those things look like. So that you can start to track out what your career could look like within diversity and inclusion in athletics, and also some things that you might be able to use to help your own organization, whether that's coming up with some plans for yourself, coming up with your own description for your organization. We want to make sure that we are collecting a lot of that information to be able to share with our members. So we believe that's one of the strongest benefits. In addition to that, we want to work and partner with sanctioned organizations that are focused on advancing access and opportunity for underrepresented groups within athletics. We know about the women leaders in college sports, the MOAs of the world, et cetera. We really want to work and be partners with a lot of these organizations who are doing this work as the individuals who are sitting at the individual campuses or conferences or at the individual organizations that are doing this work on a day-to-day basis. Next, we want to engage and share professional development opportunities. And in addition to that, serve as an information and consulting hub. And not necessarily in consulting with different organizations, but consulting with our members to see what it is that we can create for you to best serve you in your job on a day-to-day basis in order to advance this at your institution as well. And then one additional benefit, we know that specifically with the NCAA and the MOIC, in getting the ADID passed this past year, one of their original pushes was actually to have an individual or chief diversity officer within every athletic department. That's something that we also believe in. And we believe that if we are organized within how it is that we conduct ourselves within DIECE, that we will be able to help champion that push to have a diversity and inclusion professional within every athletic department and professional organization for sport organizations. We also want to collect some feedback and be able to provide some guidelines on what these roles look like and what an actual diversity and inclusion department looks like at these individual organizations and sport teams as well. And so for the committees that we have 4 committees. I'll start us off as the lead for the External Relations and Content Development Committee. And then after we give a little bit of information about the committees, I'll kick it off to my other board of director members, and they'll go through exactly what their committees will be doing and look like. So for the External Relations and Content Development Committee is really similar to what this panel is now and what this webinar is like now. We'll be responsible for the external strategy of DIECE. And so what that means is, how are we creating content to share on our social pages? How are we creating content to share with the world to really interface and show what DIECE is and what value DIECE brings? So whether that's our website, whether that's marketing, social media, whether that's inviting some of our members to come and speak on panels with us and for us, we really want to focus on what that external strategy is for DIECE to share with the world to show how valuable our membership really can be.
So for the Membership Affairs and Professional Development Committee, this particular committee, is really charged with assessing current membership and determining outreach and engagement strategies for future and current membership. So really looking at how we, reach out to all of those folk, and then really providing professional development to DIECE members. Personally, as a former special educator in Baltimore City, really having my focus in teaching and that educational perspective. A lot of the DEI work that a lot of us are tasked with, or are now tasked with as ADIDs, is to provide that education for our coaches, staff, our student athletes. So this particular committee will really sort of focus on how do we build up that capacity, not only in that DEI component, but really focusing on how we can better provide our members with some tangible sort of strategies to implement some really great DEI education.
All right, so for Partnerships and Support Committee, this is a lot of external engagement. So we are a huge firm believers that diversity, equity, and inclusion cannot exist in a vacuum, that it only is prosperous when there are a lot of stakeholders feeding into the work. So this is establishing partnerships with external entities, including, but not limited to, again, the NCAA Office of Inclusion, MOA, Women Leaders in College Sport, MOIC, thinking about the different entities that we can partner with, again, to further the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then also utilize us as the industry experts to serve as the experts in spaces that are when diversity and inclusion is being discussed. So this is to further partnership and external engagement within what DIECE is and what DICE's mission is.
And I will lead the recruitment and retention committee. And so this is something that I'm very passionate about, and obviously ties into a lot of the work that I do professionally. And, you know, everyone has heard folks say, oh, well, we want to hire more diverse individuals, but they're just not out there. And most people doing this work, we know that's not true. And so my committee will be charged with coming up with ideas to get people to have more diverse candidate pools, and then also getting, you know, diverse candidates the job. So recruitment, selection, and then also retention. For both staff and also student athletes as well. There's a few sports that are traditionally basically white. And so what can we do to kind of help diversify some sports? So this committee is all about recruitment, selection, retention for both staff and student athletes, trying to build inclusive departments across the country and diversifying college athletics.
All right, and then as Sheridan mentioned earlier, the meetings will be monthly. The first half of the meeting is basically building a sense of community, so we get to meet and talk to each other, know what's going on each other's campuses. And the second half of the meeting would be subcommittee meetings, so breakout and being able to like connect with those different groups that we just mentioned. And then one of the things that we really want to do is the in-person event once COVID has subsided a little bit. And if we do have the NCAA Inclusion Forum, using that as a space that we all can get to meet and discuss ideas as an opportunity for DICE as well. And then another thing is we want to create annual reports and then also put out reports around like best practices and recommendations as well.
And before Nick gets started with the Q&A, one thing I'll add to that last bullet point is I think that's something that will help set us apart from some of the other like NACDA type affiliates. We want to meet with our members monthly. And I think since this work is going to be changing daily and ever evolving, we want to make sure that we're having these conversations monthly with all of our members, just so we can build that community and help each other throughout the year instead of just the one in-person meeting or you know, discussion boards and things like that. So I think that's going to be huge for the growth of not only this organization, but also just the work in our industry.
Awesome. So, you know, I'm tasked with, you know, leading this Q&A session. As we mentioned earlier, please utilize the Q&A section for some questions. But what I'm going to do to kind of kick us off is sort of ask each other, almost act as a moderator for a quick little panel discussion, only 2 quick questions, but really sort of impactful questions. And I think can really get the ball rolling, not only for about more that we do as DICE, but also just about this ADID role, just nerves, all sorts of things. So I'm going to start with this, you know, simple question. Looking at the polls that we had the ability to see some folk were excited about being the ADID, some folk were unsure, but we wanted to sort of ask, you know, where would you start if you were an ADID? I feel like I'm excited. I don't really know enough about DEI work. This might have been something that, you know, I might be doing, but I'm not quite sure where to go. I know this is a really high pressure time. So perhaps we can have one person kind of start saying, hey, I'm excited, but I don't know where to start. Does anybody want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll start. So I think for me, and I'll just speak for me, what helped me when I first started in this role a year ago was research and commitment, and so and education. And so I don't think there's like a diversity inclusion expert just because this work changes ever so often. And so I think you have to be committed to educating yourself, have to be committed to learning more, and also just not being an expert, but just being someone who understands this work, is passionate about this work. And so once I started to educate myself, that was something that I did before I even brought the diversity and inclusion plan to my athletic director. And so just soaking up as much knowledge as you can to learn about all the different intricacies that D&I work comes with, all the different identities and folks that you have to serve, I think is something that you have to do first. Because this is not easy work. It's challenging, it's emotionally taxing, and so you'll find that if you do the correct research. So I think that's definitely something you have to do to begin with, is just be passionate about it and have a commitment to education.
Thanks for sharing, Thomas. Can we maybe have, I think Sheridan, I think I saw you unmute yourself.
I was about to start. So to piggyback off of what Thomas is sharing is you have to know what you're diving into. And I'm a huge believer that you have to talk to people and talk to stakeholders and understand the challenges and the issues that folks are going through. But even more so, I would say there's a misconception that you have to eat the whole elephant at once. And I think with the huge emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion work right now, it's like, go, you have to do everything. You have to do it right now. We have to get it done. We have to push all these things forward. And the first thing that I would offer is to first and foremost, give yourself grace, because you aren't supposed to know everything. You have to give yourself time to like sit in a new role or sit within this new designation. But even more so, being very strategic in how you are specifically trying to figure out where you want to have impact. So I always think about let's think of some really quick wins that we can have, that we can really focus on, things that are low hanging fruit, whether that could be, really thinking, surrounding some effort around this voter challenge, the voting in November, like thinking of some voting challenges, voter education, that type of stuff. We're thinking about developing spaces for underrepresented groups. Like those are things that are pretty low hanging fruit that you can do, and then start to really entrench yourself in thinking about a long-term strategy, and not just stopping at specific programs and initiatives, but thinking about how you can have impact with culture. But again, don't try to eat the whole elephant at once, because there's so many different dimensions, and if you think about it, you can get so overwhelmed with all of the different dimensions. But give yourself grace and start to kind of think through long-term strategy.
Thanks for adding that, Sheridan. I can say, just personally, I think seeing how challenging this work can be, and recognizing how important it is to piecemeal it and really think sort of strategically, what is it that I can do within my department in this particular thing? What are the low-hanging fruit items? And that kind of leads us sort of naturally to our next question. So, as ADID, how might you plan to support your student athletes and your staff during this really uncertain time? Sheridan mentioned some things that, she has working for her. And so, for some of our other panelists that haven't, quite spoken yet, perhaps you all can share some of those things. And I know that I see some questions in the Q&A, so we'll get to those shortly. But if you can just kind of share, what are some tangible things you all are working on, and how do we navigate this really uncertain time? Because it is certainly taxing and challenging for a lot of us in the DEI space and athletics.
I'll jump in really quick, Nick. So some of the things that we have been talking about that I'm planning to do is, I wouldn't say amplify, but really start to focus in more on some of the inclusion-based work that we're doing on our individual campus. Because the thing that is pretty prevalent at this point is, of course, there's going to be a lot of conversation about if we play or if we don't play, or what that looks like as far as the identity of the student athletes that we serve. And one thing that I have mentioned and will continue to mention is that, hey, what's happening right now is not a whole lot that's different compared to what happened 2 or 3 months ago, because at that point, our student athletes also weren't playing. They might have been training, but they weren't playing, right? And within this work, these are still very, very large pieces of the identities of the people that we work with. And so this work itself is not necessarily going to stop. It might actually be amplified at this time. And so we're just trying to stay our best to stay consistent and continue to do the work that is necessary, and show our student athletes like, hey, this might be a time that you can really dig in and learn a lot more about yourself and how you can advocate for some of these things because you're not playing at the moment or you're not training at the moment. And so really emphasizing that, hey, just because we're not participating or training or practicing right now doesn't mean that this stops, and that we can continue to sharpen what it is that we do, in hopes that once we come out of this thing, we can do a little bit better.
Thanks, Dewan. I think, you bring up a really great point about, athletic identity foreclosure and really amplifying some of this work because, during this uncertain time, there's so many ways in which we can continue to support our student athletes and really have them dig deep and really think about some of those components of their identity that perhaps maybe have taken a back seat during this, during normal times, but right now is highlighted and amplified. So I think with that, if anybody else wants to answer that question, if not, we can open it up to the Q&A. You already got some great questions there, and I'm sure that there will be some more questions coming on in. I can already see the chat blowing up. So before we address those, anybody else want to piggyback off of that last topic that Dewan was mentioning?
I'll say something real quick. I think it's important for all of us to make sure that the student athlete programming and the staff programming mirror each other, and then also combining those, getting everyone in the same Zoom room as much as possible, using Zoom breakout rooms and different things like that, just because, on some level, we're all going through the same things right now. And so to be able to support each other, both student athletes and staff, will be heavily important. And that's something that we're definitely discussing right now at the University of Arizona.
Thomas, great point. I think, when we talk about, wanting to build more inclusive cultures, it's not just solely with our student athletes. Obviously, a lot of our focus is on supporting our student athletes, and rightly so. But if we want our student athletes to build that inclusive culture within their teams, within themselves, within their friends, it's really important that we mirror that as staff, as coaches, as administrators. So really creating that space for us to do that reflective work and dive deep into that, and really creating those opportunities to have people in the same space to really, have those conversations and really dig deep and develop there. So I think with that in mind, we're going to get to these Q&As. I'm excited to see all of them coming in. This first question was, how have each of you navigated the reluctant department head towards department-wide DEI programming? So I think that question is asking about how have you sort of navigated some of the hesitancy initially, but now this surge of DEI programming. I would say mainly around maybe June 1st. For a lot of us, we saw a lot of emphasis come on around department-wide DEI programming. So maybe talk to us about how you all have navigated that sort of space.
I guess I can start with this one. Me personally, I think having data is huge, and you have to have numbers. I think they say numbers don't lie. So for me, having data and showing it in a way that it makes sense for administrators. For example, I know some of the institutions I've been at, graduation rates, right? And creating certain type of programming for particular pockets of students. I think pulling data and having that and being able to use the data to articulate what it is that you're trying to do is a really good tool to have and to use. That's been very effective for me when I have these conversations with administrators around D&I work, specifically if it is for a particular subset of students. For example, when we was looking at doing programming for our international students, just looking at how many students we have that are international, and then looking at, different like GPA benchmarks and stuff like that. So for me, always having the data and then using it during the presentation and being able to use it as a talking point. That's something for me I think is huge.
And I'll just sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sharon. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, piggyback off of that, I think that that's huge. You have to be able to show value and show why. And I think sometimes particularly in college athletics, we really focus on quantitative data, but I also think that there's a lot of value in qualitative data. So getting feedback from those that need it. I think a lot of the programs and initiatives, particularly for students that we've developed, have come from student needs, and being able to take that and say, this is what the students are requesting, this is what the students want. But I also think for the first time, which is exciting to say, that there's a lot of power in numbers. And I think as we are in the space of college athletics, everyone is competitive. Everyone wants to be the best. Everyone wants to do it correctly. Everyone wants to put forth the new shiny toy. So utilizing that as kind of a push to say, this is where we're at. We have the opportunity to either be out front, which is the hopeful way to kind of start, and or, hey, to kind of back your argument or what you feel like needs to happen, to utilize examples from other institutions. And that's been really beneficial too, as these positions have developed. Particularly, again, speaking about the Big Ten, I'll throw things out. Hey, Dewana, Nebraska is doing this, and then it's like, oh, okay, we gotta think about this. So that's been that's been another way to kind of think about framing it.
Thanks, Princeton and Sheridan. And I think the idea of data gathering is so important in this work. And I think one of the challenges initially, even just for me personally, getting started, was how do I get that data to provide that value? I think right now we're in a particular space that we hadn't been before. I got hired in October, and so the value of DEI work in athletics was still sort of not as clear. And now we're in this space where I think people are really seeing that. But like, you both have mentioned, just really having that there will really be impactful and really can help push, you all even further. We got a great question about education for those in positions of power. So how can DIECE help provide that sort of education, and how can, ADIDs just in general sort of provide that really pertinent information for those really important stakeholders?
I'll jump in, Nick. So will there be some type of education that goes to the position of power? Yes, that's our aim. And the way that we are thinking about it within DICE is essentially we get a lot of information from our student athletes and staff who come from different backgrounds in regards of how it is that they are, how they're experiencing, their experience on campus, right? But the one thing that isn't necessarily present right now is one collective group who can actually advocate on behalf of them and actually show what the education looks like for those particular groups or for the individuals that are doing the work. The one thing that is really, really difficult right now for the groups that are in place, again, whether it's the Women Leagues of College Sports, the NCAAs, the MOAs, et cetera, is that they have so many different focuses that sometimes they can't really drill in on how do we best support the diversity and inclusion director, or how do we really dive in on this one particular topic. And we want to be able to fill that gap by inviting those people in who really do that individualized work. And then we advocate on their behalf because we know that their work is important to our collective success. And so what that education might look like is, as we mentioned, we want to do reports. So at the end of year 2 or year 3, we can say, hey, in diversity and inclusion in sport, here was one of the hot topics. Here's what the diversity and inclusion directors feel about this particular topic. Here are some of the people who are doing it at a really, really high level, and provide that to those people in power to be able to help them drive what that informed decision looks like to better enhance that experience for that individual, that group, that particular role, that job, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully that answers the question. And if anybody else has anything they want to add, please do.
I'll just add quickly too, as a part of the external engagement committee, that'll be something that we'll also be engaging with to partner with a handful of other entities. I know Dewan had hinted at that, but we've already, prior to the launch, have talked to a few people kind of under the ground to utilize us as the practitioners in the space with the reach that they already have. So utilizing us to come in and partner to think about what is specific education that we can provide with the reach or the stakeholders that they are specifically focused on. So yes, that is absolutely a part of the plan and something that we're actually planning on getting done here pretty quickly.
Awesome. Speaking of, educating folks in power, a lot of that comes with getting resources, right? So a great question that was asked was about what are some of the places you all have gone for resources to help you all in your role. I know for me, I've leaned a lot on you all, as fellow practitioners. If I had an event or something I was planning, y'all were my first email. But what are some of the ways in which we leaned on each other, or what are some other spaces that you all have gathered resources to really assist you in this role so far?
Yeah, to add what Nick said, the biggest resource for me so far has been people doing this work also in college athletics. So when I first took over our DNR roles 2 years ago, before I actually had the title, I reached out to Sheridan, I reached out to DeWine, I reached out to a few other folks that are on this call. I won't say their name and volunteer their time, but anyone that that has this title, or they're doing this work, reach out to them and just pick their brain, because that was the biggest resource that I had to get started when I started doing this work at Arizona. And then I would also say the NCAA inclusion forum was huge for me as well. Too bad that it wasn't offered this year, but I went 2 years ago, I guess now, and that was huge for me. All the sessions there, I got to meet a lot of great people, heard a lot of great things. So the NCAA Inclusion Forum is something that I would put on your radar if you've never heard of it. It's awesome resource. And then there's a few books and different things that I've read, like Diversity in Leadership, and then there's another book, it's called Diversity in the Workplace, since I do HR work. So those are the resources that I got started with.
Thank you, Thomas. And I think too, and I think you mentioned it earlier, just the ways in which this work is ever changing, right? So even a year ago, the popularity of the term anti-racism or white fragility or some of the things that we see now are always changing. So continuing to kind of do that self-work, that self-reflection, really staying engaged in what's going on in the DEI sort of context, just in general, I think is really, really important, and really figuring out what are the ways and you can kind of utilize that for your own sort of needs at your particular sort of institution. And speaking of one question that just came in and I think is really impactful and important is, what are some of the roadblocks and maybe some of the hurdles that you see the ADID position having in the future, or even some of our own roadblocks that we've had? Like I think many of us sort of mentioned in the webinar already, this is a challenging job. This is not, easy to be a full-time DEI practitioner, especially even given our climate. So perhaps, maybe some people can share just what are some of the roadblocks you face, or what do you see upcoming that may be a challenge, and how can we as DIECE support some of our future members?
Yeah, I'll start with that. I say some of the roadblocks that we faced when we first got started was just people just being turned off by the terms diversity and inclusion. And so we had to break it down to them. Like, it doesn't mean that we're just trying to get rid of basically, people that have positions in our organization right now. It doesn't mean that since we're not as diverse as we want to be, people are going to start losing their jobs because of that. Like, we had to actually teach them about the power of diversity, the importance of inclusion, and break it down for them. And then also just let people have fun with it as well. And so we created a bunch of different programming. So we have like a staff fitness class, we do lunch and learns, we do wellness Wednesdays. And so we made the education piece of it fun to kind of get over that hurdle of people being reluctant to be a part of the diversity and inclusion push. And I think that helped us out. So you will be met with some opposition just from some folks who just have diversity fatigue. They've seen it so many times, online, but just trying to, meet them where they are, and making sure that you're making education and programming, useful, and making sure that it's something where people can latch on to and know that it's not just a indictment on them just because they hold a position that we would like to get more diverse folks to hold.
Thomas, yeah, I think you bring up a great point about the ways in which going about DEI education is so important, right? So the ways in which it has to be interactive, both engaging, both sensitive, but yet, you know, probing. I think all of those sorts of things are so valuable in doing DEI work. And I think as DICE, you know, being different practitioners in different types of college campuses, I work at a Catholic institution. And so the ways in which, you know, I have to, you know, navigate some particular topics around DEI work can be challenging. And so I think utilizing that, you know, our resources as well to kind of go through that will be really impactful. We have a few more questions. I'm scrolling through the Q&A here. So one question that I did see was the ways in which we can support different organizations. I think maybe someone already answered that, but just talking about, you know, we all represent different types of institutions, but how, you know, how can we as DICE be a support to institutions that are smaller? How can we be a support to some of our Power 5 schools? How can we be a support to all the different types of NCAA or organizations, since we're not all the same type of school? So maybe someone can kind of elaborate on, you know, how we plan to do that and how we can be really intentional there.
I can jump in. So I think that that's the beauty of DICE, and as someone who has experience working at a few different levels, Division III and Division I, understand that the need for this work is there at all levels, and I think everyone is differently resourced and things of that nature. But it's a really cool opportunity to come and learn, and I think back to, you know, some of the points about like what are the biggest roadblocks. We're trying to eliminate a roadblock by creating this space, and no matter how much you have, how many resources you have, how many people you have supporting the program, we're hoping that you can come to this and learn something as it relates to best practices and what folks that have developed departments are doing. Like I said earlier, every time we come to this space, and that's why we kind of change the structure differently, particularly with a meeting structure. As Thomas had mentioned, we're meeting monthly, but in that we're also just creating a space to have discussion and giving folks the opportunity to ask questions about specific topics related to recruitment and retention, related to resources or community engagement and things of that nature. And I can say that every time I came to DICE, I learned something new about what someone was doing or gained an idea. So no matter how much, you know, if I have a lot of resources to spend on programming or I don't have any, like, we're going to be able to provide a very inclusive experience in that capacity. And then as it relates to partnering with external organizations, that's specifically what the External Engagement Committee is for. Obviously, we are within DICE creating this for diversity and inclusion practitioners, understanding that there were a few different spaces where we could fit in, but not necessarily specifically focused on our work. So that was the purpose of really us coming together as those people. But wanting to, again, really partner with folks who are doing the work and serve as, you know, the practitioners in this space and push forth their initiatives with hopes that, you know, it will be mutually beneficial. So.
And I'll also add the biggest piece for me is working with all these different groups to help diversify college athletics. There's so many different diversity and inclusion committees within N4A, within NACMA, within COSIDA. So working with all those different groups to help diversify college athletics is a huge goal for me. Making sure that these candidate pools are diverse, making sure that diverse individuals are getting selected, and then just growing it, as I keep saying.
Excellent. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. One question, you know, that I've been scrolling through and I saw a great question. It says, would you say that creating D&I programming is a major part of enhancing the department's culture just as a whole? We all have different types of organizations that we're a part of. So maybe we can speak to the value in enhancing just that culture that's, you know, that might already be there.
Yeah, so I'll take this one too. So being a part of HR and doing D&I work is the whole culture piece is the driving force behind everything that we do. And so as I mentioned, I went to the NCAA inclusion forum, and I think it was Jen Fry that I heard say, you have to have inclusion before you have diversity, or you should have inclusion before you have diversity, just because if you want to have diverse individuals, but it's a toxic culture, they won't stick around. And so I think making sure that we're doing everything we can to provide an inclusive culture for all of our employees, all of our student athletes, that's huge. And I think you don't have a proper D&I plan without planning to make your space more inclusive.
Yeah, I think to add, I know I'm the moderator, but I think to add to, there's a lot of opportunity to really build on the foundation of your campus's culture. So, you know, at Providence College, we talk a lot about the Friar family. And so what does that really mean to be a family? How can we implement and integrate the core principles of DEI work into the foundation of being a Friar family? So I think it really does kind of enhance a lot of that work. And like Thomas was talking about, just the ways in which creating that inclusive sort of culture will really help attract a more diverse workplace. I think you really have the opportunity to do so. So I think just really sort of hinting and really pushing forward in that space is very valuable.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Prince.
I was about to just say real fast, like I think it's very valuable because you want it to be reflective of the people that's on the field and on the courts, right? So like I think for me personally, as a former student athlete, seeing that there's other individuals within the department that may look like me or identify with some of the things that I identify with, because from a mentorship standpoint, I think that's important, given the clientele with who we serve. So to me, the diversity and inclusion work is super important because in a lot of the predominantly money-making sports, those individuals tend to look like me, you know. So for me personally, I think having various thoughts and having various different individuals that can work with those student athletes and work with those staff members, I think is very important.
Awesome. So I think that will sort of kind of conclude our Q&A section of this sort of conversation. We all work in athletics, so we like to be right on time. I think it's 6:59, right on the dot, or at least for me, I'm Eastern time. So with that in mind, I think we have some next steps, and I'm going to pass it over to Prince.
Sweet. Again, thank you all again for attending this session to learn more about DIECE. Like, we are super excited for the launch of this program as well. Like, we have a lot of great things that's in store for you. Please continue to engage with us. Follow us on social media. There's a lot of good things that we're going to be having. Again, we meet once a month, so you'll start seeing, now that we have some emails, and we're going to try to start creating a listserv so you can see when we have our meetings. We really enjoyed being able to share this with you. Again, this is a labor of love. We've been working on this for a year and a half, so to finally release it to the public and share it with you all, and to see that you all are engaged and excited about it, I can't thank you enough. So again, from the bottom of my heart, and I think everyone shares these same sentiments, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we look forward to engaging with you all. So.
And just want to touch base on, Dewan, I know you're the main one on our external relations, but talk about the membership a little bit. And just so you all know, we'll be having our first formal DICE meeting on September 11th. So Dewan, you want to jump in?
Sorry, everybody. I was answering one last question before I jumped in. So essentially, for our next steps, we mentioned we have our first meeting coming up in September. What we would urge you to do is we'll actually email everybody who signed up for the initial webinar call with steps on how it is that you can sign up for the website. So the way that the website works is you sign up for a page, and then you get access to the website to be able to see these resources. And in addition to that, you can also see all the members who also have signed up for DICE so that you can connect with them individually if you have some individual questions or want to connect with somebody from a specific school, et cetera, et cetera. So once we email everybody from the attendee list, you will see this is how I signed up for DICE to become a member. And also we'll have a Google form that allows us to collect some information so that we have some touch points with you all in regards of your institution, your role, your name, because on the website, we're not able to pull that directly. So you'll get some follow-up for us. There'll be about 2 steps that take about 5 minutes total to complete. And that will allow us to be able to share some of the resources that we have and create more resources for one another to make sure that we can share best practices and help each other ultimately at the end of the day.
Thank you, Dewan. So as Prince shared, we are just so very thankful for you all and are looking forward to engaging. Please feel free to follow up with any of us individually with follow-up questions or back to that email that you will get. But again, we bid you good night and hope that you are ready to engage in DIECE and change the world to create inclusive excellence in sport.